Today, we'll explore a powerful but often overlooked strategy: how to guide GPT's output using constraints and parameters. Here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll define what constraints and parameters are and why they're so valuable when prompting. Then we'll dig into specific types, including word limits, tone settings, and format requests. We'll look at examples for each so you can see exactly how they work. And finally, we'll connect all of this to real-world applications: how constrained prompting improves clarity, saves time, and increases usefulness in both personal and professional tasks. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to fine-tune GPT's responses with precision. Let's begin with the basics. What are constraints and parameters? In the context of GPT, a constraint is simply any rule or boundary you apply to a prompt in order to control the output. Think of constraints as guardrails. Parameters, on the other hand, are specific variables you can include in your prompt that shape structure or details, like the number of paragraphs, the format of the output, or the tone. Without these tools, GPT tends to generate answers based on general patterns from its training data. That can be fine for brainstorming, but if you're looking for something tailored to a particular need, formal tone, short summary, list format, then constraints and parameters are essential. Let's look at a simple example. Say you type, "Summarize this article." GPT might return several paragraphs worth of content, but if you adjust the prompt to say, "Summarize this article in 50 words, GPT now has a clear constraint. It will attempt to condense the content into a very concise output that meets your requirement. That's a constraint in action, word count in this case. Now let's look at tone. Suppose you're writing for a business audience. You want clarity and professionalism. In that case, you could add "use a formal tone" to your prompt. For example, write a 100-word explanation of cloud storage in a formal tone. GPT will adjust the vocabulary and phrasing to suit that tone. Switch gears and say, "Write in a casual or friendly tone," and you'll get a very different feel. Simpler language, maybe even some humor. You can see how even small tweaks to your prompt significantly change the response. These small choices are types of prompting parameters, and when used together, constraints and parameters shape the entire interaction. So now, let's take a closer look at the different types of constraints and parameters you can use with GPT. We'll start with two of the most common: word limits and tone preferences. Word limits may seem like a simple feature, but they're incredibly useful. By setting a minimum, maximum, or specific word count, you're telling GPT how detailed or how brief you want the output to be. This can prevent overly verbose responses or encourage richer detail. For example, compare these two prompts: "Explain photosynthesis in 100 words" and "Explain photosynthesis in 500 words. Both are asking for the same thing, but the second clearly gives GPT more room to expand. That allows for more detailed explanations, possibly with examples or breakdowns of each stage of the process. The first, with fewer words, forces GPT to prioritize only the core concepts. One question that often comes up here is, does GPT always hit the exact word limit? Not always. It does its best, but it may be off by a few words. If precision is important, a quick edit on your part might be needed, but overall GPT tends to stick pretty close to the target. Now let's shift to tone preferences. Tone has to do with the voice and feeling of the language. Are you aiming for professional, academic, casual, playful, emotional, or neutral? GPT is quite good at adjusting tone when asked. Let's consider a single topic: describing a product. You could prompt, "Describe this new water bottle in a formal tone." The result might be something like, "This stainless steel hydration vessel integrates advanced insulation technology to maintain fluid temperature for extended periods." Now try, "Describe this water bottle in a fun and casual tone." You'd likely get something more like, "Keep your drink icy cold with this awesome bottle. It's got double walls to fight off the heat and keep the good vibes flowing." Those two sentences say roughly the same thing, but the tone changes how the audience receives the message. That's powerful, especially in marketing, education, or even chatting with GPT as a creative partner. Let's look at another parameter: output format. The way GPT structures its response can make a huge difference in how useful that response actually is. You can ask for bullet points, numbered lists, tables, or even paragraphs with specific headings. This gives clarity to the response, especially for organizing complex topics or when preparing something to share with others. Take this prompt. List the top 3 benefits of using AI in education. You're telling GPT not only what to write about, but also how to present the answer, as a list of 3 items. GPT might respond with 1. Personalized learning experiences. 2. Instant feedback and assessment. 3. Access to diverse educational resources. Clear, structured, and easy to use. Now try something more detailed. Create a table comparing the pros and cons of remote learning versus traditional classroom education. In response, GPT might lay out a 2-column table, one side for remote learning, the other for traditional classrooms, and list pros and cons under each. By specifying the desired format, you're helping GPT organize the content in a way that serves your goals. This can be particularly useful when drafting reports, outlining presentations, or comparing options in a clear, side-by-side format. So, now that we've looked at constraints like word count, tone, and format, let's talk about how to combine them. These elements work even better together. Here's an example of a combined prompt. Write a 150-word email in a polite and professional tone requesting feedback on a recent project. Present the email in paragraph form. You've now set 3 parameters: length, tone, and format. The result is usually something very close to what you'd send, often with just minor tweaks. And this brings us to the practical part. How do these skills transfer into daily life? Let's start with professional settings. Maybe you're a manager drafting updates, a marketer creating product descriptions, or a freelancer responding to clients. In all these roles, time and clarity are essential. By using constraints, you reduce back and forth, speed up content generation, and improve consistency. Think about this scenario. You're preparing a meeting outline and need a clean list of discussion points limited to 5 items. You could prompt GPT with, create a list of 5 discussion points for a weekly team meeting, focusing on productivity and project updates. That's fast, clear, and easy to edit. Or, imagine you're writing content for a client and the guidelines specify 500 words in a neutral tone using subheadings. You can feed all of that into your prompt. Write a 500-word blog post on effective remote teamwork in a neutral tone using subheadings, and get a structured draft in seconds, saving you hours over time. Now let's turn to personal use. Let's say you're preparing a resume or a cover letter. Instead of starting from scratch, you can guide GPT with constraints. Try something like, write a 2-paragraph cover letter for a software developer applying to a fintech company, using a confident but respectful tone. The constraints help shape GPT's voice and content, making the result feel like something you'd actually want to send. And here's a fun one: creative applications. Writers often use GPT for inspiration, but constraints can help push creativity even further. For example, you might say, write a 50-word poem about autumn using a nostalgic tone. That's a tight constraint, and it forces GPT to be selective and expressive at the same time. Or try this. Generate a story idea in 3 sentences that involves a time machine, a cactus, and a missed birthday. You've told GPT what objects to include, how long the response should be, and essentially invited it to play within boundaries. The results are often surprisingly inventive. Let's talk about another question that sometimes comes up. How literal is GPT with constraints? That depends on how clearly they're defined. GPT is highly responsive to structure, but it doesn't operate with numerical accuracy like a calculator. So if you request exactly 75 words, you might get 73 or 77. For most scenarios, the result is close enough. If precision is key, like in published content, you'll want to review and refine manually. Also, it's important to remember that constraints don't just limit GPT. They also direct it. When used thoughtfully, constraints are not restrictions, they're guidelines that open up more relevant and tailored possibilities. Let me give you another real-world case. Think of someone who runs a newsletter. Each entry has a fixed structure: an opener paragraph, a list of tips, and a call to action. Every week, this person can prompt GPT with, write a 3-paragraph newsletter about productivity habits, user-friendly tone, Include a numbered list of 5 tips in the middle paragraph. With that, GPT delivers a draft that fits the formula, and that makes content creation faster, easier, and more consistent. We've covered a lot, so let's pause and quickly recap the key takeaways. First, constraints and parameters are essential prompting tools that help shape GPT's responses to fit your needs. By adding specific instructions about word count and tone or output format, you guide the system toward more focused and useful results. Second, word limits help you control the level of detail. Whether you need a brief summary or a full explanation, specifying the length ups your odds of getting exactly that. Third, tone settings adjust the voice of the reply, making it more professional, casual, friendly, confident, whatever suits the situation. Fourth, requesting specific output formats like lists, tables, or outline paragraphs drastically improves clarity and usability. Finally, when combined, these constraints allow you to generate content that's custom-tailored to your goals, whether that's drafting an email, writing poetry, preparing a summary, or formatting data for a proposal. Your next step is to start trying out these techniques on your own. Think about something practical you need to do this week. Draft an outline, generate key takeaways, create a summary, or even just organize a set of ideas. Whatever it is, experiment by adding constraints. And notice how those small instructions change the outcomes. Thanks for joining me today. Keep experimenting, and I'll see you in the next session.